Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte
What makes sense of this for me? He's a sitting vice president. He's been at this job in Washington since he was 29 years old. Why did he have no money? Why was his staff so bad? Why? And this is Congressman Clyburn said this. He says we'll have to sit down and get serious at how to retool this campaign. They are lacking in many ways, and I guess he is going to play some type of role. Where was the foundation?
Well, I think he started with a good foundation. I will say this. They had a really good strategy around delegates, which I know isn't very sexy, but it's how you win the nomination. Mm-hmm. So he's never been a strong online money raiser. And when you couple that with struggling in a campaign, all the momentum gets sucked out. All the oxygen gets sucked out. He's raised a lot of money now. But I look at it as this way. You know, we've never had a president this obsessed with getting reelected. Okay? I worked for Barack Obama, had more than a passing interest. Trump's got this network. He's got his unofficial campaign chairman, Vladimir Putin. He's got billions of dollars. He's a brilliant marketer.
But that is not right. Don't say his unofficial campaign chairman, Vladimir Putin. That's belief.
Listen, he got help last time.
And he doesn't have the whole network. Every show here is different. And if you talked to him last night on Sean Hannity, he's not happy with this network.
Listen, this is his happy place. It's like his own political Westworld, where he can be the man he wants to be, not the man he is.
He knows it's the #1 channel in America. We beat every channel, no matter the format. That's what he knows.
This is not a debate. Okay, this is. The news media outlets should hold the powerful to account, not be account to the powerful. My point is, Biden needs to build a campaign to beat Trump, who's got all these other advantages outside of whatever campaign he runs.
Well, we have you on the network, so...
I appreciate it. I think Democrats should come here.
Let me ask you about...
all the time to talk to your viewers.
We agree. We invite them all. President Obama, when is he going to endorse? Is this the time now?
No, I think he's going to let voters play the process. What Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, other leaders who've stayed neutral need to do is help bring this party together, which I think will come together. But that is if you don't bring the party together, it's hard to win the election. So I think that's the appropriate place.
Right, and you make a good point. You know, we are the #1 cable morning news show. We're the #1 news channel. So this is where the eyeballs are. That's why you're here talking about your book. Explain A Citizen's Guide to Beating Donald Trump. Or does the title explain it?
Well, it does. I think there's lessons in here for any election. So the point is, you disagree, obviously. I do think Trump has... he's got Fox, and he's got Breitbart, and he's got local Sinclair stations, and he's an incumbent, which brings advantages. They've done a remarkable job trying to find and register voters. So you look at Trump's approval ratings in some battleground states, and you're like, well, it's 43, 44. He's going to be easy to beat. It's not going to be easy to beat. He's a ferocious political competitor. He's going to add a lot of vote to his vote total through registration. And he understands how to communicate in today's day and age so well. Blunt force messaging, GIFs, memes, photos. So we don't have a similar infrastructure. We're only going to have a few months. He's ready for this election. They know where they're going to get every single vote they need in Wisconsin and Arizona. So what does an average citizen do? Well, they can contribute, and we need them to, and they can vote. We need them to hit the streets, hit their phones, get on social media, create content. If we don't have millions of people basically fighting back every day against some of Trump's advantages, he's going to win re-election.
And you know you're the person to do that because you actually underestimated Donald Trump last time. You said Hillary has a 100% chance of winning.
Yeah, I was 100% wrong.
And you also said that he was going to, you were going to win in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And when you were pressed on that, you said, well, instead of winning by 6 or 8, we'll win by 3 to 5.
Right. Well, I think what I saw, and I think listen, everybody got this wrong, but having run presidential campaigns, I deserve special, I think, criticism for this. You saw that she was going to underperform Obama in some rural and exurban areas, and a little worried about turnout, particularly amongst young minorities. But some of the shifts that Donald Trump got, there were counties Barack Obama won 20 points that he won by 20. There's counties Barack Obama might have lost by 10, Hillary lost by 40. And so part of the message of my book is you got to get in those streets. Most of those people are going to stick with Trump, but you got to peel a few back. So that's what was happening, and that is such a core to Trump's political base, is there are counties that used to be slightly more competitive, or we could keep within 20 points, that he won by margins. I'm a student of politics. Some of those margins on Election Day in states like Iowa and Ohio and Wisconsin, I couldn't believe they happened. And by the way, Trump and his campaign deserve a lot of credit for that, and he did that without much money. Not the professional campaign he has right now. So again, that's the other reason I think Democrats cannot underestimate how tough this election is going to be.
All right, David Plouffe, thank you very much for coming on, telling us about your new book, A Citizen's Guide to Beating Donald Trump.
It is Friday, the 6th of March of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, the French 77s are shaken, poured, and ready for your imbibing pleasure. Wherever you may be in the world, you know we will be springing ahead not too far from now. So it must be noon somewhere in the world. It always is. Hey, what about that coronavirus? You know, COVID-19. Apparently, Trump was not going to go to the CDC because after he told everybody, if you're sick, just go to work, you'll get better, he heard that somebody might have the virus, COVID-19, at the CDC. And the germaphobe that he is, of course, he's not going to go there, even though he told America, don't worry, it's all a hoax. Go to work. You'll get better. When it gets warmer, you'll get better. Yeah, I got to tell you, when it gets warmer, isn't that really when the diseases just increase exponentially? Yeah, Trump is one science expert, isn't he? Well, I don't know what he is, but he should not be the president of the United States. He was impeached, he is impeached, and he will always be impeached. I don't care if Carter Page wants reparations. Did you hear about that? Carter Page says that conservatives caught up in the Mueller Report and everything else should get reparations. There is a price to be paid, apparently, he says. Carter, let me tell you something. Trump and the crew were not absolved by Mueller in the report. And we'll talk about that. Yes, we will. Because Bill Barr may lose his law license. He may not be able to be a lawyer. And as far as I know, you can't be Attorney General without a law license. Bill Barr is a two-timing sleight of hand con man. And Judge Reggie Walton took him to task. It seems, I have to tell you, it seems that not only will he risk losing his law license, because this is what happens to, well, shall we say, regular lawyers, doing what Bill Barr did in a court of law and in the court of public opinion. That would cause a lawyer to lose their law license. But when an attorney general does this, they go to jail, John Mitchell. So we'll be talking about that as one of the offerings here in the Bistro Cafe part, actually, of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. So if you're going to tell a big lie, you got to tell the big lie on everything. So just changing gears just a little bit, okay? Here we have Trump lying about deaths and infection rates here in the United States, because it will affect the market if the truth comes out, which the truth has been coming out, and indeed it has affected the market in detrimental ways to Donald Trump on many levels. The Fed mysteriously adjusted their rates to increase confidence, and people did the opposite. What makes you think Donald Trump's going to be telling the truth about the jobs report that came out today? This guy, he's a wise guy. You listen to him at his Nuremberg rallies. He's like doing a Teflon Don. He's doing a Gotti. He's not doing a Tony Soprano. Tony Soprano was actually quite constrained and reasonable. He's doing a Don Gotti. Or a John Gotti. There we go. Don John Gotti, the Teflon Don. He's a wise guy. And apparently, the Law and Order crowd, they just love that stuff because they were never about law and order. They were about impressing their bullying authority on anyone who got in the way. They make up the law and you better follow their orders. That is the Law and Order party. It is not about the rule of law. It is not about representative democracy. Oh, you had to argue about that with some Christo-fascist, tax dodge, mail order, street preachers. We're not a democracy. We're a republic. Yeah. Been hearing that BS since the 50s, and I didn't even know anything was going on in the 50s. I was just a little kid, baby. I was a baby. Been hearing about it, though. Oh, we're not a democracy. We're a republic. No, we're a representative democracy. You made democracy into some sort of pejorative. Oh, Melania destroyed Barack Obama's basketball court at the White House and is putting in a tennis pavilion. And she bragged about it. Let them eat Russian tea cakes, I guess. Well, Donald Trump couldn't make a layup without Vlad's help anyway, so hey, there you go. This is the big news. Silly me. When I put up the show and I share that the show is going to be starting, I put myself in an even more profound and secure bubble, airtight, because I can't focus in if a lot of stuff is coming in. I can multitask. I'm good at it. But at some point, I have to shut off the new news because I have the curated show to fulfill. On top of the long-time rants that I've been doing now at the top. Well, regardless, I discovered after getting the show ready to be a podcast that unbeknownst to me, because I thought, I'd serve that 24-hour suspension on Facebook because another rotation of Trump bots, trolls, somehow got into a private closed group, an uncensored private closed group. And within days have been getting about a half a dozen to a dozen longtime liberals in that group suspended. What was my transgression? Saying fuck Trump. Fuck Vlad. Fuck Moscow Mitch McConnell, and fuck the Vichy collaborators fucking up America. That comment was not the one I was initially suspended for 24 hours. That got piggybacked right on top of the end of the suspension from a previous, pretty much taking the whole group that I just mentioned to task. And Facebook said, that is bullying and harassment. I claim it is political speech. And this closed private group is an uncensored group. And apparently these guys can say, fuck liberals. Liberals suck Bernie's dick. You're sucking on daddy's nipple. No, you don't. They post memes. Of course, that's not going to get picked up by Facebook, apparently, because they're memes. They only pick up inline text. These pictures of the most vile, crass, ugly BS. Racist. And violent, too. I'm talking about, they'll be doing some sort of vague threats, and then they'll show a picture of just, there's a bunch of guns over there in the corner. I wonder what that means. And yet, respond to that by saying, hey, fuck Trump. And fuck you, too. That makes you the bully. That makes you suspended because you have harassed them. So now I'm suspended for 7 days. I asked for a re-review. Because I wasn't even saying fuck to the idiot Trump brats that were riling up the whole page. I was making a general statement. Lenny Bruce would probably get suspended from Facebook for a lot longer. So I suspect when this 7-day suspension is up, I will probably get an even longer suspension, if not an outright banning. Because apparently political speech by liberals is not protected, is not allowed. But all of the worst, I'm talking about bloody pictures of fetuses, nooses, black guys in nooses, threats of that BS, guns. None of that is considered harassment. Well, part of it in this group is that we don't report that. It's an uncensored group. It's stupid that they're posting this BS anyway. They don't play fair. They cheat because that's the only way that they can, quote, win. No, you don't win. You're going to have your title stripped. You're going to have to give up your World Series ring, maybe, huh? Stealing signs? How about fucking up America? Fucking up democracy? I think you lose your title over that. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, former campaign manager for Barack Obama, David Plouffe, angered Fox and Friends, oh boy did he, for calling the network Trump's own political Westworld. Good for you, David. On the rest of the menu, Bill Barr was slammed by a federal judge for misleading America about what is really in the Mueller Report. In other words, he lied. A DOJ attorney could not explain to the Supreme Court how abortion restrictions on doctors help anyone. They just couldn't do it. They came totally unprepared. That doesn't matter. Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, Jesus, and a federal court blocked Trump from banning asylum-seekers coming to the U.S. Yeah, putting them down there in the southern border of Mexico is now illegal. Stop doing it, Trump. We'll see. We'll see. I keep hearing that our institutions are intact because people are still following the law. Trump has not followed the law. After the break, we then moved to the chef's table, where a London policeman was arrested for links to right-wing terrorism. I'm shocked. And Florence Nightingale was a tough pioneer whose principles on hygiene underpin nursing today as the world battles COVID-19. What was her main statement? Her mission statement? Yeah, wash your hands. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. Hopefully you'll notice our link to our Patreon page. Do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Your generosity assures that we are able to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended, even before the Magna Carta. I'm sure only the good angels motivate our desires, only the good. And your generosity, manifests that goodness. Thank you so much. And we also want to give a big hearty thank you to our most recent recurring Patreons. Welcome aboard, and we ever so appreciate your generosity, and it is substantial. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I take care of at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and link that up on social media, but Facebook won't allow that link, so it's okay. We have a crew at Netroots Radio. They'll put it on the Netroots Radio Facebook page for me. And then you can share from there. Please do. And if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, go to at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. We're down in the W's. Or some people say the W's. I like to say W. Well, we better dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it comes out of BuzzFeed by Jason Leopold. Yes, that Jason Leopold. Sharply questioning the credibility of Attorney General Bill Barr, a federal court judge ordered the Justice Department to turn over a complete copy of the Mueller Report so he can personally review the hundreds of redactions and decide what information should be released to the public. Now, let me remind folks, this is how it normally would work. A judge, by law, is to judge whether something is secret or not. And they will research it in what's known as in camera, meaning in private, back in the chambers. And they will decide if those redactions that Bill Barr insisted were justifiable, or were they lied about to the court being justifiable when in reality, after the judge reads them, see where that's going? But you do know, we've already had Trump go out on in public and whine that, we have judges here. Can you believe we have judges? Who ever heard of that? Probably somebody who learned their American civics from the FSB, your handler. Now, the opinion was written in response to a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit by BuzzFeed News and the watchdog group Electric Privacy Information Center. I should add, Jason Leopold's name is on the court order. U.S. District Court Judge Reggie Walton pointedly rebuked Barr and the DOJ and specifically called into question his credibility. I read the opinion. It's scathing. Before the redacted report was released, Walton said Barr's public characterization of it had failed to provide a thorough representation of the findings. That's a nice way of saying Bill Barr is an inveterate liar. This has led the court to question whether Attorney General Barr's intent was to create a one-sided narrative about the Mueller Report, a narrative that is clearly, in some respects, substantively at odds with the redacted version of the Mueller Report, the opinion stated. Now, let's be clear. Let's remember, we do suffer from what Gore Vidal called American amnesia. We can't remember what happened last week, let alone what happened 10 years ago. So there's no way we're remembering even something 6 months ago. So let's remind ourselves. Bill Barr came before the American public when the Mueller Report was released, held it up for 4 days, and for 4 days spun a narrative that was 180 degrees opposite of what the Mueller report actually said, even in its redacted form. If they're lying about what they've unredacted, what are they lying about in the parts of the report that are redacted? And Reggie Walton says, I'll decide. The court cannot reconcile certain public representations made by Attorney General Barr with the findings in the Mueller report, Walton wrote. The inconsistencies between Attorney General Barr's statements made at the time, when the public did not have access to the redacted version of the Mueller report to assess the veracity of his statements, and portions of the redacted version of the Mueller report that conflict with those statements, caused the court to seriously question whether Attorney General Barr made a calculated attempt to influence public discourse about the Mueller report in favor of President Trump, despite certain findings in the redacted version of the Mueller report to the contrary. The Mueller report did not find that Trump was absolved of, let's call it what it was, collusion, conspiracy with the Russians. It did not say that he was absolved of that and found not guilty or innocent of it. What Mueller said is that because Donald Trump obstructed every inch of the way and wouldn't give up documents and interviews with people that would normally occur in the normal course of these investigations and law enforcement, without that, he could not say with certainty that Trump was absolved, because it sure seems like he was hiding something. And now Reggie Walton is saying, give me the whole report. I will look at the redacted parts, and we will then determine whether Bill Barr lied. You know, perjury is a felony. Next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, is by Lisa Needham out of the American Independent. The United States Supreme Court heard arguments in June Medical Services LLC v. Russo over whether Louisiana can require physicians who perform abortions to have admitting privileges at hospitals. Oh yeah, they also probably have to have a janitor closet every 8 feet. How many hospitals have janitor closets every 8 feet? Well, surprisingly, the anti-abortion lawyers discovered hardly any, if any, anywhere. So, you know, I can't have an abortion there. Just 5 years ago, the Supreme Court decided a nearly identical case, Whole Woman's Health v. Hellerstedt, and found that admitting privileges laws were unconstitutional because they placed a substantial obstacle in the way of someone seeking an abortion. So what changed in the last 5 years? Nothing. Nothing at all, except for the fact that Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are on the court right now. He was able to add the two staunchly anti-abortion members to the court because, why? Moscow Mitch McConnell held up every vote, every interview of any judge, jurist in any level of the court system that Obama proffered for at least the last year of his presidency, if not more. So they could illegally stack the courts with Federalist Society extremists all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States. A physician admitting privileges requirement has long been an unnecessary and without valid medical justification, but they remain popular among abortion opponents as a way to restrict access to the procedure. In the June Medical Services case, Louisiana's attorney argued at the court that abortion providers in the state showed abundant evidence of life-threatening health and safety violations, but that's demonstrably untrue. As Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg pointed out correctly during arguments, as a general rule, abortion is among the safest medical procedure that there is, and in fact is far safer than childbirth itself. Ginsburg also noted that in Louisiana, a hospital transfer where a patient receiving an abortion at a clinic has reason to be admitted to a hospital was required far less than once a year, or less than one per several thousand statements. Justice Sonia Sotomayor then expanded on it, noting that Hope Clinic, one of the plaintiffs in the case, had served roughly 3,000 patients per year for 23 years, or roughly 70,000 people. In all that time, in the whole 23 years, Hope Clinic transferred only 4 patients to a hospital. I don't know of a medical procedure where it's lower than that of any kind, Sotomayor said. Far from being an abundance of life-threatening and health safety violations, the data shows that Louisiana abortion clinics are instead incredibly safe. A look at how admitting privileges work in the state shows the admitting privileges law was designed not to increase safety, but to prevent abortion providers from doing their jobs. Sort of like the CDC is prevented from doing their job. The Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press. In the latest twist on a key Trump administration immigration policy, a federal appeals court said it will prevent the government from making asylum seekers wait in Mexico for U.S. court hearings starting next week, unless the Supreme Court steps in sooner. And you know they will, because Balls and Strikes Roberts never calls a foul ball on the home team. Donald Trump's administration says it is asking the Supreme Court to intervene, and it had asked the policy remain in effect until next week to give the High Court time to decide. The Supreme Court has consistently ruled in the administration's favor on questions of immigration and border enforcement because, by and large, the Federalist Society judges are pretty racist. The latest turn in the case comes after the Ninth Circuit halted the policy along the entire southern border last Friday, but suspended its own order later that day after the government warned of dire consequences. Wow, was that a threat? Why wasn't John Roberts saying anything about that? Remain in Mexico is a crucial part of the Trump administration's response to large numbers of asylum seekers appearing at the border. Well, you know, he does have a final solution. He always has. The court ruled on Wednesday that the policy will no longer be in effect on Mexico's border with California and Arizona starting March 12th, unless the Supreme Court wades in sooner, and you know they will. It declined to extend its order to federal courts in the two other southern border states, New Mexico and Texas. Judge William Fletcher and Richard Paez, both appointed by Bill Clinton, said they acknowledge that nationwide orders applied to places outside a court's jurisdiction are a matter of intense and active controversy. They reaffirmed their view that the policy, known officially as the Migrant Protection Protocols, wow, like the Protocols of Zion, boggles the mind when you consider it in those terms. Well, they said that is illegal under U.S. law to prevent sending people to countries where their lives or freedom would be threatened because of their race, religion, nationality, political beliefs, or membership in a particular social group. There is no question about the extreme danger to asylum seekers who are returned to Mexico, they wrote. Judge Ferdinand Fernandez, an appointee of Bush, H.W. Bush, disagreed with blocking the policy at all. Judy Rabinovitz, an attorney for the ACLU, which sued to end the policy, emphasized the majority's opinion that it is illegal. If the administration had any respect for law or any sense of decency, it would end this program immediately, she said. We will continue to work permanently to end this illegal and inhumane policy, and I would say that you might start with getting rid of Santa Monica Goebbels Stephen Miller. That would be a nice start to ending this policy. Well, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from the break, you do know that we will go through weather from around the world. And we, of course, will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, a Me Too day at the office. In the powerful but understated The Assistant, we get a look at a Weinstein-esque web of abuse far different from that in Bombshell or The Loudest Voice. There are no sex scenes or humiliated women commiserating. What we have is an assistant, Jane, played by Julia Garner from the Netflix series Ozark, beginning a day before dawn at an office, making coffee, fixing the copier, etc., all in the hopes of one day getting a shot at producing from the connected entertainment mogul who runs the company. She moves about her day amidst printer noises and off-camera conversations, which gradually become foreground. She finds a piece of jewelry in the boss's office, engages with his wife on the phone, then with the boss about how she engaged with the wife. Then there are frat boys, plus a couple of years, who work in the office, listen in on phone calls, giggle, and give her borderline-to-meaning advice on ways to placate the big guy. Eventually, she's expected to onboard a second assistant, 18 years old and from South Dakota, and who's being housed at a 5-star hotel where the boss is known to take meetings. This causes her to go to see the HR manager, played by Matthew McFadden, who explains things with the same attitude he brings off in HBO's Succession. The published credits contain sort of a spoiler. There's no potentially oxygen-sucking male character as the boss, just a phone voice, a pivotal and bold decision from director Kitty Green that transforms the movie. The Assistant is a day-in-the-life picture. It covers no ground and reaches no conclusions, but as Garner's weary Jane makes her way home that night, still employed, character and audience have plenty to consider. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Scientific American podcast editor Steve Mirsky, and here's a short piece from the February 2020 issue of the magazine in the section called Advances, Dispatches from the Frontiers of Science, Technology, and Medicine. The article is titled Quick Hits, and it's a rundown of some science and technology stories from around the globe, compiled by assistant news editor Sarah Lewin Fraser. From the U.S., off the California coast, scientists measured a blue whale's heart rate for the first time using a device attached to the animal's skin by suction cup. The heart, likely weighing hundreds of pounds, beats from 37 down to 2 times per minute, varying dramatically between diving, feeding, and surfacing. From Peru, researchers analyzing satellite and imaging data have found 143 new Nazca lines. These are large line drawings of humans, animals, and symbols etched into the Peruvian landscape millennia ago. The drawings include a humanoid figure 16 feet across, spotted by IBM's Watson AI system. From Brazil, despite the long dry spells in Brazil's Caatinga region, scientists found the tree Hymenaea cangaceira drizzles copious nectar from flowers to attract pollinating bats. A full-size tree can release 240 gallons of the stuff with 38 distinct scent compounds over a single dry season. From Norway, archaeologists' ground-piercing radar found a Viking-era ship surrounded by a filled ditch lurking below the soil of a western Norway farm. The ship was once within a burial mound. From Jordan, researchers uncovered a 2-horned figure in early Islamic ruins that may be the earliest chess piece ever found. The roughly 1,300-year-old object matches a rook found in an Iranian chess set from about 400 years later. And from Ethiopia, microbes thrive in many of Earth's harshest environments, but researchers found no life at all in briny, scorching, acidic pools near Ethiopia's Dalal volcano. Knowing the boundaries for life's adaptations helps to narrow the search for Earth-like life on other planets. That was Quick Hits by Sarah Lewin Fraser.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1857. That was the day the U.S. Supreme Court handed down one of its most infamous decisions. It was known as the Dred Scott case. Dred Scott had been born into slavery. He was owned by a military man named John Emerson. His military service brought Emerson from the slave state of Missouri to the free state of Illinois and then the free territory of Wisconsin. While in Wisconsin, Scott married. Emerson's career path then turned back to Missouri. A few years later, Emerson died. Scott attempted to purchase freedom for himself and his wife. When he was not successful, he took his case to the courts, claiming that his time on free soil should have granted him freedom. The Supreme Court decision was devastating for Dred Scott and for all who opposed slavery. In a 7-2 decision, the court ruled that as a black man, Scott had no claim on citizenship under the U.S. Constitution. The majority opinion left no ambiguity, saying Scott, quote, had no rights which the white man was bound to respect. But the court went even further. It ruled that the Missouri Compromise of 1820 was unconstitutional. This meant that according to the court, Congress could not move to prohibit slavery in any U.S. territories. Reaction in the North by those who supported free labor was swift and angry. The Chicago Daily Tribune declared it is the first step in a revolution which, if not arrested, nullifies the Revolution of 76 and makes us all slaves again. The Dred Scott decision sharpened tensions over the question of slavery and marched the nation closer to civil war. Today's Labor History in 2 brought to you in memory of Carol Hillman, a passionate friend of workers and volunteer of the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Senator Elizabeth Warren announced on Thursday that she's ending her 2020 Democratic presidential bid, essentially turning the race into a one-on-one battle between Senator Bernie Sanders and former Vice President Joe Biden.
I will not be running for president in 2020, but I guarantee I will stay in the fight for the hardworking folks across this country who've gotten the short end of the stick over and over. That's been the fight of my life, and it will continue to be so.
Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is still officially in the race, but having garnered only 2 delegates from her second-place Super Tuesday finish in American Samoa, she has no path to the 1,991 delegates needed to secure the nomination. As for Sanders and Biden, both candidates are gearing up for next Tuesday, as 6 states will hold primaries or caucuses with intense focus on Michigan, a key general election state that has 125 delegates up for grabs. Sanders' team announced that instead of holding a rally in Jackson, Mississippi, he will instead be campaigning in Michigan, the only swing state contest next week, on Friday and Sunday, going all out to win there in what has become a must-win contest. Sanders eked out a victory over Hillary Clinton in Michigan in 2016, taking the state by 1.5 points. A federal judge on Thursday criticized Attorney General William Barr's handling of former special counsel Robert Mueller's report on Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election, saying Barr, quote, distorted the findings when he first described them to the public. U.S. District Court Judge Reggie Walton, the D.C.-based judge overseeing a lawsuit brought by BuzzFeed News and the watchdog group Electronic Privacy Information Center, ruled that he would review an unredacted version of Mueller's report to evaluate inconsistencies that he saw between Barr's public statements last year and the partially redacted version released to the public. Walton said the discrepancies led him to, quote, seriously question whether Attorney General Barr made a calculated attempt to influence public discourse about the Mueller report to help President Trump. Jason Leopold, the intrepid BuzzFeed News reporter who brought the lawsuit, is one of my guests on Friday's edition of The Nicole Sandler Show, heard on Progressive Voices at 5 p.m. Eastern or available anytime after at NicoleSandler.com. The Senate on Thursday passed a more than $8 billion spending package for fighting coronavirus in a 96-1 vote, sending it to the president. By the way, that one no vote was Rand Paul. The House approved the bill on Wednesday, which includes $2.2 billion to help local, state, and federal agencies prepare to respond with testing, infection control, and tracking contacts of people who test positive. There are now 228 coronavirus cases and 14 deaths in the U.S. Pentagon officials said efforts to develop vaccines may not be quick enough to wipe out the virus before a second wave hits next winter. Meanwhile, members of the union National Nurses United said they have faced shifting guidelines and a shortage of supplies as the tally of known coronavirus infections has increased. The nurses called on the Centers for Disease Control to quickly increase testing for COVID-19 and demanded that federal officials implement emergency standards for hospitals and clinics around the country. Bonnie Castillo of National Nurses United shared a letter from a nurse currently in quarantine after caring for patients with the virus in Northern California and showing symptoms but cannot get tested.
I volunteered to be on the care team for this patient who we knew was positive. I did this because I had all the recommended protective gear and training from my employer. I did this assuming that if something happened to me, of course, I too would be cared for. Then, What was a small concern after a few days of caring for this patient became my reality. I became sick. When employee health told me that my fever and other symptoms fit the criteria for potential coronavirus, I was put on a 14-day quarantine. My doctor ordered the test through the county. The public county officer called me and verified my symptoms and agreed with testing. But the national CDC would not test me because if I were wearing the recommended protective equipment, then I wouldn't have the coronavirus. What kind of science-based answer is that?
Of the 6,500 members who took a survey by National Nurses United, only 30% said their employer has sufficient protective equipment. The state of Alabama Thursday night executed Nathaniel Woods, a man convicted in the 2004 killings of 3 police officers who were shot by another man. Supporters, including the son of civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr., waged a last-minute appeal to stop the execution as the case drew national attention. Wood's co-defendant, Kerry Spencer, who is now on death row, has confessed that he was the one who pulled the trigger, saying that Woods was innocent of the killings.
I got good news.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. Please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin, weather from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit. A bit cooler today. We were bumping 70 or a little above yesterday, but we have dropped precipitously and will only get to a high of about 56 to 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Gusts of winds out of the west-southwest at 3 miles per hour currently, and should have a mix of clouds and sun early, followed by cloudy skies this afternoon. Increasing clouds, bringing in a mix of rain and snow tonight. Winds will be out of the west-northwest in a couple of hours at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Bringing with it later on this afternoon and this evening, occasional rain with some snow mixing in overnight. Lows in the low 30s. Winds out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Looking, I don't know, if we get some slush, it may change how many inches, but we're looking for tomorrow. Rain and snow tapering off in the morning, decreasing cloudiness in the afternoon, a high of about 50 to 52. Winds will be light and variable. And it looks like we're supposed to get about 1/10 of an inch of rain mixed in with some snow from that, and quite a bit tonight. So I wouldn't say 1/4 inch of rain, but it might be. Pollen is rated at none. The air quality index is good. It's actually down quite low at 18 parts per million, but that daytime UV index is moderate and has gone up to 4, which it had a couple of days ago. So the angle of the sun, folks. The angle of the sun. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.02 inches. Visibility is at 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 92%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 50 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 51 and mostly cloudy with a flood advisory. Oh, my. Rome is 58 and partly cloudy with its own flood advisory. Kyiv is 50 degrees and fair. Kabul is 45 and fair. Hong Kong is 63 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 45 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 and cloudy. And New York is 45 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted. These purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. British counter-terrorism officers have arrested a serving London policeman on suspicion of being a member of a banned organization linked to right-wing terrorism. You know, they do that over there. We don't really do it here, because there's so many good people on the side of the right-wing terrorists now, aren't they? They wear khaki pants and polo shirts. So well coiffed. So dapper. The 21-year-old constable was detained in North London and remains in custody. An address in North London was being searched. The statement said the officer was in frontline policing, meaning he worked with the public. It did not name the banned organization.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Mindy Burrows of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Victorian Britain took Florence Nightingale into its heart as the lady with the lamp who tended wounded soldiers. But a new exhibition shows her as a tough pioneer whose principles on hygiene underpin nursing today as the world battles coronavirus. The show at Florence Nightingale Museum within London St. Thomas Hospital marks the bicentenary of Nightingale's birth into a wealthy family and tells the story of how she fought her family's opposition and social constraints to become the world's most famous nurse. Florence Nightingale's legacy is really, really important. Obviously, she was a forceful leader, and we need clear, visible, strong leadership today, and certainly in modern nursing, said Fiona Hibbets from the Nightingale Academy, a nursing institution of the hospital. The exhibition, Nightingale in 200 Objects, People and Places, will run for a year. St. Thomas's is one of the handful of hospitals in Britain with a specialist ward for the treatment of coronavirus patients. The emphasis on sanitation, good hygiene, fresh air, exercise, good food, no matter how much we advance, those fundamental foundational principles of Florence are still very much the basis of modern nursing, said Hibbets. It's the same old message. Wash your hands. Nightingale became famous after she and a small team of nurses traveled to modern-day Istanbul to treat British soldiers wounded in the Crimean War, in which British, French, and Ottoman forces fought the Russian Empire. How quickly history rhymes. in a filthy hospital set up in a barracks on the Asian shore of Bosphorus. She saw thousands of soldiers die from infectious diseases rather than their wounds, which is what they should have died from, prompting her to try and improve conditions so that they could die from their wounds instead of just infectious diseases. The lamp she used to tour the wards at night is on show at the exhibition, as is the nurse's uniform she created. Nightingale died at the age of 90 in 1910, continuing to work and write late into her life. The exhibition also recreates her London bedroom, allows visitors to smell her perfume, and hear a recording of her voice. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we'll meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.